Guys, if we could just start. Firstly, good afternoon to everybody that's here. It's 2 o'clock with 5 minutes. I'm trying to stick to the time as much as possible. We're mindful that this is not the last program for the day. We're going to have to try as much as possible make up time so that all the other outstanding programs can be covered in the remaining time. So in the interest of time, I'm going to try to move as expeditiously as possible, but not underestimate the tasks that we have to execute on. The topic we're dealing with today is called Metis 2020. I actually had to go and research it myself, so please don't look at me as an expert on the topic. I'm far from one. I've done a bit of research on it. But what I've done, and to my credit, is that the lineup that I've built here that's going to speak on this is very, very well-learned veterans of the industry. I think I don't need to introduce a lot of the people that are in this table today. They've been in this industry, I think, before some of you were born. Some of you were already in the industry. When I was looking at the biography, and I'm going to say this, I saw, and I think it speaks to credit of the panel I have today, that one of my panelists, Mr. Walter Brown, in 1968, he actually was completing his degree at London South Bank University. That was 1968. He was not being born there, he was finishing a degree. now some of you were not even born at that time, so you better listen and take notes. I've got a very good lineup here. As I've indicated, I'm just going to try and introduce everybody. I'm Siyabonga Madyibi. I'm part of the interim executive committee that has been driving the Wi-Fi forum up until the point where it is now. I suppose that's why I have the pleasure of chairing all of the sessions today. Next to me I have, and I'm not going to go through all the biographies because of the time. Next to me I've got Prashil Garib, that's pronounced correctly. Prashil is a portfolio manager at Telkom. He's responsible for internet and digital product management into the broader enterprise of South Africa. And then next to him I've got Dr. Abid Nava. He is the inaugural chairperson. Maybe a lifetime chairperson of the Wi-Fi. We hope not. He's the inaugural chairperson of the Wi-Fi Forum, and his CV as well. If I do go through it, it will take 20 minutes. So I will also leave it at that. And next to him, I have a veteran of the industry, Mr. Hans van der Groendal. He's also he's a featured editor for engineering IT, and again his list his CV is quite long, so I'm not going to attempt to go through all of it. And last and certainly but not least, I've got Mr. Walter Brown. He's currently with the South African Communications Forum. He's one of the research analysts there, and that completes the lineup of our panel for today. Now, going back to the subject matter, the subject matter really deals with what is called Metis 2020. Metis 2020 really is it's a group. The entire abbreviation, if I can just call it, it stands for Mobile, Wireless and Communication Enablers for 2020 Information Society. This is a research initiative that was started in 2012 by the European Union. It's mainly funded by the European Union, and it's also partly funded by private sector organizations that I will get into a little bit later. But really, its mission is to investigate, explore, and establish a standard for 5G. And I think as we sit in this room, we all can get into a very long debate in terms of what is 5G. There are various schools of thought in terms of what 5G is. And I think what Europe has decided to do is, as one of its flagship programs, is to embark on the course of defining exactly what that is, well in advance, and easily 10 years in advance, given the fact that it started in 2012 and looking really at around 2020 for the standard to be settled, finalized, and commercialized. Now, if you think about it, And I'm just going to give a brief history now where we come from in terms of standards. If you think about it, the first standard was 1G. This was introduced way back in 1981. And what I've noted from when I looked at the various lists of the standards, that there's almost a 10-year gap in between all the standards that we've seen over the years. If you think about it, 1G was introduced in 1981. And 1G was really the standard that didn't have mass adoption. It was a standard that was used mainly by, I think, the so-called hockey-talkies used this standard. So it was not really massively adopted. It was used by corporates, especially in outflung areas, to be able to communicate. Wide range kind of devices covered in very, very long distance. And then in 1991, we had 2G coming in. And if you remember 2G, that was the beginning of cellular telephony as we know it today. I think its biggest strength was that it enables mobility, which had not been seen at the mass level up until that time. But I think one of its biggest weaknesses was it was very limited on the data side. So it was more of a voice standard than a very fluent standard when it comes to data. And in 1991, we saw the introduction, in 2001, we saw the introduction of 3G, which is a standard that I think most smartphones today use. I think one of the biggest and the primary things on 3G over and above mobility was that the messaging started to increase. People had a better experience when it comes to accessing the internet. But I think one of the biggest problems with 3G was that the hype that it came with in terms of how fast it was going to be and the kind of broadband capacity it was going to give all of us, it didn't really live up to that hype. And naturally, I think as things evolved, we had to move on to where we sit. We had 3G, and then we had what is called now 4G, which started in 2012. And unfortunately, South Africa, I think because of the spectrum constraints that we've seen up until now, again, we've been rather restricted in terms of the best experience that we could possibly obtain from the 4G. I would venture to say that, in fact, in South Africa, we're still not at a level where we can say we've fully experienced what it's like to use a fully flourishing, well-equipped 4G network. And now, already we're talking about 5G. So that it just shows you how quickly things move. And how quickly we must plan to move with the times. You know that the minister was here this morning. There was reference to the SA Connect, and one of the fundamentals of that policy is the release of 4G spectrum. And if you think about the fact that the standard was adopted in 2012 and we're in 2015 in South Africa, and effectively the mass spectrum that is necessary for 4G is yet to be released. So I think what is commendable about the whole Metis initiative, amongst other things, is the fact that it will give Europe and I think Dr. Nava, when we get to the nuts and bolts of this, I will raise is that one of the things that for me it highlights is in order to be able to take the lead, how early you must go into this kind of things, how prepared you must be to take the bull by its horns and do some exploratory work well in advance. I'm talking a 2020 standard, and already in 2012, the exploratory research had started around this initiative, which is very commendable. And I think as Africa, we have to ask ourselves, because we keep saying we're tired of being consumers of these technologies, and yet when it comes to laying the groundwork to launch us into the next level, to becoming manufacturers, and playing the manufacturing game, we still not to be taking the initiative. And I would love it if some of the panel members would begin to talk to some of those things. And not just focus on what Metis is doing, but what are we doing, what can we do as a continent, thinking about 5G and where the technology is going. I think those are my introductory comments. What I will do, I think, to make it fairly easy, I will start at the end there and ask Walter to do the introductory comments. And just because whatever comments we have about this week, we are quite aware that we're talking very future kind of technology. But I think the important thing is to highlight where we are now and how we launch ourselves to that. One of the things that I also noted that I would like maybe all the speakers to talk to as well is the fact that some people define 5G as a combination of 3G, 4G, and Wi-Fi into a single seamless platform. And if indeed that is the right definition of 5G, we are here talking Wi-Fi, where does that leave us as people that are driving the Wi-Fi agenda? If some people are looking at 5G as a consolidation of Wi-Fi being part of that overall experience. So if maybe the speakers would also just speak to that as we take this forward. What are you going to do?
Thank you, good afternoon, everybody. I came here with one purpose in mind. And unfortunately, here I asked me to be the first one I should come at the end to play the devil's advocate in this case. We talk about Metis, which is specifically a European initiative, it's a research initiative. We understand very clearly where your 5G has been actually trials, tested, and so forth. It doesn't come from Europe, it comes from the Far East. I think because it's a European issue, sorry, I'll be using fairly politically incorrect language. Because of all, I remember a lot of things that have happened in history, in our industry. I remember the GSM versus CDMA issues, for example. CDMA, I remember the political issue that said, we shall control it. Same thing happened in the HDTV standards, by the way. Invented it. Dealt with through Europe and America, I think, during the period, to drop the bombshell and the competition to say, hey, but some guy came along with a digital standard that defeated all of them. So there's geopolitical issues in this whole thing around Metis. It's not the technology is there. If we talk about Wi-Fi, 5G. Now, I know South Africa, I know as much of Africa as well. We will get it when it immediately arrives. We've got the capacity, the capability of having 5G as soon as that's standard and as soon as it's available. Samsung will have it, not South Africa. That's where I want to go to. There are three things that we're talking about here in this Wi-Fi. By the way, the Wi-Fi forum is long overdue. It's absolutely vital and necessary, and I hope it moves to all the other industry associations. But one however, if we look, we already know that as soon as the 5G standard is available, Samsung will have it, Cape will have it, or rather the wealthier areas. We're still trying to spread 2G into most of the rural areas. I think 80% of South Africa is covered at 2G. GPRS. Yes. That's what we've got all around. And we will be talking, we are great innovators, by the way, or rather, adopters of innovation in South Africa. Did you know, for example, I think I spoke to the chairman here, that we laid the first undersea cable in 1870-something, 1878, from Durban to Yemen. We were one of the first countries in the world to use wireless technology during the Anglo-Boer War. And today we're talking about Wi-Fi. By the way, we're talking about Wi-Fi. Cobus was here, America CSR. Since 2005, they've been proving Wi-Fi mesh in the rural areas of South Africa. They've done it. You go to the museum, you will see antennas. When they ran out of an antenna, by the way, they took a broomstick, found a Janton, put a hole in it, put a coaxial cable in it, point in the right direction, 1.7 megahertz per second. We can innovate. If we can use this opportunity to innovate for our society, not the technology is there, we understand it. We can use it, we can adopt it, but, as we heard a little while ago, only 10% of our homes have 49% of households have got one member who does use the internet, by the way, the statistics are right. But only about 10% of our homes have got access at home to the internet. To me, that's Wi-Fi. We heard what ECs were. ECs were Wi-Fi from Netflix. Now that's stunning. And we worry about this competitive environment where, wait a minute, you can't use the public sector to compete unfairly against the industry. I support both. I'm certain I get paid by the industry. However, have we provided the for South Africa? I don't think so. The industry hasn't. Perhaps the environment is wrong, I don't know. But if there's a gap of that nature, then I think the public sector, i.e. municipalities, must jump on the bandwagon. I like what's happening, It might not be done efficiently and so forth and so forth, But this Wi-Fi forum will say that we've not developed our fixed broadband infrastructure. We've got wireless solutions that are exceptionally suitable for them, low cost, and we can make them work if we want to. Just to close up, we put in a submission to ICASA a little while ago when they're talking about the IMTO. What did we say? They were looking at how do we use various bits of spectrum. 450 megs. Nobody really wants it. Its capacity is 20 megs, but at 20 megs you can get a 200 megabit per second throughput. How do we do it? Use that as a backbone with whatever technology, LTE if you want. But at the end of it all, for our rural communities, provide a mesh Wi-Fi network. Not everybody will use it immediately, but they will in the long run. And use centers like your clinics, your schools, or whatever public institution you have as your node. And allow the whole coverage of villages with Wi-Fi signals. People will use it, especially the youth. We've got smartphones right now. I tell you what, if they've got coverage, it will be used. And pretty soon it will be used for far bigger and bigger advantages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You scratched open a lot of things, right? But maybe I just want to answer you on that question of mesh in rural areas. I mean, we know that Morocco has got some very interesting models and some very stuff. There's some mesh systems operating in the Eastern Cape. But for some reason, I sometimes think it's political. We just don't seem to take the success of that particular project and take it to the rest of the country. They say, oh, well, people won't use it, they won't this. But as you also said, when something is there, you use it. All right. I don't want to go into that debate because we're supposed to be talking about methods. And I knew nothing about it until I was told last night when I was to be on this panel. So, it was a bit of a crunch. And then I realized that it is a European project. It has a duration of 2.5 years and it's supposed to finish by 30th of April this year. Now, what I find interesting, they're talking about 2020. But if you talk to, for instance, Nokia, they are doing trials right now on 5G, which basically this project is about. And they actually predicting, and that was in Africa in November, they were predicting that their first trials, live trials, will be in 2016, and they predict that by 2017 they should actually have it commercially available. Now, this is maybe the problem that was also talked about earlier today, and is about standards. When we talk about the European standards and ETSI, we're talking 2020. But I'm sure that when we talk about perhaps the people, as you mentioned, in the east of the world, or in America, the industry in America will move very quickly and we'll get an IEEE standard long before ETSI comes to the standard. And maybe that's the problem that I always have. Why do we have like an IEEE standard, we have an ETSI standard, we have this standard? We're not working together. And to me, this project is very interesting if you read it and you see that all the big players are involved in it. But ultimately, are they really going to achieve what they're going to achieve? The amount of money they put to this project, 67 million euro. And it's something that actually has been surpassed already by some of the commercial entities that are part of this project. And that worries me a lot, that we get this kind of like project going, and it's almost like it's done in isolation. It doesn't take into account, if you read the documents they published on their web, of what's happening in the rest of the world. And that's my main concern, that we just don't seem to gel and do things together. We all seem to still be in silos. And we in Africa, South Africa, we're in the middle of all those silos.
Yeah, my input in this will be as follows. You know, the speed of change is almost, I mean, if I use an analogy of a speed of a car, probably in 1990, the speed was at about maybe 60 kilometers an hour of change, and the speed today, or maybe in 1990, maybe the speed in 2000 was at about maybe 300 kilometers an hour. I think the speed today in the industry in terms of change is almost operating at supersonic level, i.e., remember what is that plane that was decommissioned? Concorde. Yeah. So this is the relative speed, maybe just to give an analogy, of change between 1990, 2000, and now. So what does this mean? Maybe in 2000 there was enough time, to do things because of that speed. Today, if we are unable to cope with this speed. The speed changes business models, changes everything quickly. So, what I'm trying to say is this. I think as an industry, as a country, the example of Metis is that example of fast changing things. Now, Metis is not alone in this debate. I will highlight 3 or 4 other organizations that are doing the same thing, maybe a little bit differently. One, which has been mentioned here, IEEE 802.11 groups, which are working now on standards beyond what is called 802.11 AC or 802.11 80, to try and look at higher and much more complex speed from a Wi-Fi community. The next one is what is called next generation mobile networks. Again, that group met in Barcelona last week. They meet regularly. You can find them on the internet. Again, they work on a lot of these changes. The next one is called 3GPP. Also, that group is working on changes, for instance, because that group came out of the 3rd generation. The other 2 groups I want to mention, there's one is called NFC, Near Field Communications. Again, that group is working on standards and frequencies for spectrum that you use for closer devices, to things. The other group is what is called the Bluetooth Forum in the world. That group again is working on a number of things. For instance, the area that is growing a lot, now the 2 groups I've mentioned, one Bluetooth Forum, another one NFC. For instance, say, your shirt, your pants, your shoes, your socks, in the next 5 years will all be connected to each other, to your phone. Whether maybe to collect whatever, I don't go to, even what you call the one that you wear underneath the pants, I've forgotten its name. So, including that one. So what I'm trying to say is that all these groups, including Metis, this is the speed at which things are happening. You watch Metis, another one is working on something else, another one is working on something else. I think for me the critical question is that how do we plug into the web? I'll give you an example. Governor here, as I call him, governor of the internet, Lucky, who's responsible for ZACR, he's also part of ICANN. Now, when you look at the amount of work they do there, and the changes, and the content, and the work they do, it is such a high-speed environment. The question is, colleagues, how do we become part of this work and not be left behind? Because if you ask me today, one friend of mine said, Uncle Walter, outside, it's expensive to participate in these groups. You know what I said to him? I said, Raj, I think the more expensive thing is to be behind the world, where that gap between where the world is going and where we are, as long as that gap, it's widening, if you ask me. Where I get worried even more, Uncle Walter, is the young people whereby they live a life of isolation from what is happening at Metis, Wi-Fi forum globally, Bluetooth forum, and all these things. How do you become an engineer? How do you graduate an engineer when you don't know what's happening in the world? How do you become a technician when you have no clue of the changes that are taking place? I talked to some guys, I asked some guys, I'm not going to mention the company, installing a Wi-Fi. I was in this small little shopping mall. So I asked this technician, I always, when I see people digging fiber, I always ask them a few questions. I asked him, so what is this standard that you are putting here? He says, first I asked him, so what are you? He says, no, I'm a technician, I deploy all these things. When I looked at the box of the little Wi-Fi he was installing in this mall, it was not even 802.11n. It was the 2.3 standards. One, he did not know. Do you think that the people who of the mall knew the standard he was putting? Probably they didn't even know. Just hoy. That's the right way to put it. Just hoy. So what I'm trying to say, colleagues, is this. We need to have fora like this. To me, even more than that, one of the things we were weak to organize in this forum, Uncle Walter, was to get universities and FET colleges to come here, which I hope Siyabonga and you guys will do that. But moreover, is how we can request government to get young people to understand what is happening. Colleagues, when, I remember I was in a panel in 1989. Uncle Walter here, this is in Zimbabwe, this was the second ITU telecom conference in the country. He was responsible for it. We all, as young people, when we would pass him, no one would get close to him when you are young, because there were all these people, greeting him. When you get an opportunity, you wouldn't even wash your hand for the day. Even us here, at Telco. So they know, they don't teach these youngsters. The information that sits here, you will never get it from the textbook that we are being given. What I'm trying to say, colleagues, is that we must be very careful to not just being third, developing country, and become a least developed country when it comes to technology. I'm scared. That is the trend I see. That is the trend I see, that we are slowly becoming irrelevant. I asked Olaf who is the coordinator of Metis. Last week he addressed a small group of us via Skype. Even the people who were there had no clue what this was. If we don't do anything, that is why Siyabonga, the issue of 4G was not 2012. 4G was decided as early as 2002, that spectrum, which we have not yet deployed here. And people are talking about 5G. Right? And the business case, here is what I'm going to say, controversial as it is, the business case for anybody to deploy 4G is over. There's no need for you to do that. Wait for the next technology. It's over. It's gone. The window is closed, it's finished. If you want to deploy a technology where you have a 4-year window, how do you get a return on investment? So that spectrum called 2.6 is finished. You don't have to deploy anything there, in my opinion. And that is based on the fact that we don't understand the next generation coming, when it is planned, and the investments required, and how it's going to come. What I'm concerned that we are almost becoming a least developed country, you know, including all the buildings that we have here. But when you look at the speed of connectivity inside, the sophistication that you see in Sandton, you come to an office, very nicely done, but you can't even get 1 megabit per second speed. Very sophisticated office. When you look at it, it's glass outside. But inside, you can't get a speed of 1 megabit per second. What do you call that? This is what we are having, colleagues, in our environment. And unless I always say that, you know, like with Yagalash, boss, with Yagalash, we as Mejarisha called again. I don't know, you please interpret this in English. So, you know, a J call when, is it a J call that thing? When it eats something, you know, Metis or something, it keeps going to measure itself whether it can fit into, so that it can run. We measure ourselves wrongly as to where we are in the technology cycle and knowledge. We keep telling ourselves that we are somewhere up there. In my view, we are so behind. I think the only thing we can do is to be honest with us, Uncle Walter, where exactly we are as compared to others. Our behindness, and not keep petting ourselves, and yet we are so behind the rest. Sorry to be so honest.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm lucky that I was one of those youngsters born to answer telephone before he left us, so at least that knowledge is passed on somewhere. I think Mr. Maseko, from our telecom point of view, has put in place a couple of things that actually says that, you know, from an investment point of view, that kind of takes us on the path towards 5G. Now, 5G, although it's a technology that's on the horizon and it's futuristic, but if you consider the fact that one of our biggest investment strategies is fiber connectivity in terms of the enablement of backhaul and fit-for-purpose networks, that's one part of the plan that will get us. The second part, being sort of related to the mobile market as well, is we didn't just deploy any form of network, mobile network, we deployed data network. We straight into WCDMA. We've managed to be quite efficient in the way we refarm some of the spectrum we do have, and we are quite far ahead in terms of LTE deployment, having 1,800 of these LTE base stations in South Africa at the moment, already serving data connectivity. Now, the third part of this entire conversation is Wi-Fi. And Telkom, as a network operator, is in the Wi-Fi space, not just in serving commercial aspiration, but in two other ways. Firstly, we serve the enterprise market in terms of Wi-Fi connectivity within the land. Okay. Secondly, and we're all aware of this, the public Wi-Fi network, we've rolled out 5,500 base APs in the last, say, 3 years. And that's holding us quite well in the public sector, allowing everybody out there, not just Telkom mobile customers, Telkom customers, but anybody out there in the public to come across and use the network by just registering with our address. And the third part, from a commercial point of view is that we've now got enterprise Wi-Fi solutions where branded Wi-Fi networks sponsored by retailers and food outlets is already being rolled out. We're trialing a couple of these now with major retailers as we stand today. We've got a few discussions taking place with a few major customers in the liquor industry. So from that point of view, we are getting more commercially viable around that. So it's a multi-pronged approach, right? But just in general, we're kind of covering our bases, but we do need to understand what the role of Metis as an organization does. Notwithstanding the fact that over the last, say, 10, 15, maybe longer than that, we've already been participating in these forums at skills level. We've been sharing information. We were part of 3GPP, we were part of FMCG, we influenced quite a few of those standards as well. So from a South point of view, I have to say that we are holding the flag up, but obviously what it does prove going forward is that it needs a lot more collaboration. We all need to work together in different forums. I think the gentleman from IS this morning mentioned it quite well, that if you're a telco, be a telco. If you're an industry body, be an industry body. But know your role, but work together. That's the only way we can actually expand on this objective. And we need to acknowledge that yes, there's going to be a need for the business case, and we need to front this from different angles, okay, in order to make the cumulative strategy work. But the key question is, what is the appetite for us to go forward? I mean, it's a case of we know what it takes to put the network up. We know that there's issues from a spectrum point of view that we need to resolve in order to grow or reduce the digital divide. We know that there's alternative models, there's different ways of monetizing Wi-Fi. We can't do this by painting it with one brush. We need to do it as a team. We need to do it using different technology pieces. And yes, we need to look forward to what these different industry organizations overseas are doing so that we can learn from the best without having to make the mistake that they're making along the way. Some of the things that we try to avoid by leapfrogging these technologies. The reason, for example, we chose the WCDMA over GSM when we launched our first mobile network is we found where the gaps were and we went ahead with futurism technology because everyone else is trying it. But the other most important thing is South Africa is unique. We've got geodiversity, we've got a range of different types of people, we've got a huge Gini coefficient. So from that point of view, we need to understand which markets, which types of customers, whether it's enterprise or residential, do we serve with what type of product or service offering, so that we make it relevant for the people out there, together with government support in order to grow the objective of broadband out there.
I've just been told that we got less than 10 minutes, so I'm not going to try and summarize between those. I think they're quite clear, and I think there's a regional trend that's coming out of all this message. If we don't do something, if we do something quickly, we're getting left behind. The gap between ourselves and Europe and the rest of the world is getting bigger. We're selling technologies that are designed for urban areas, and yet we've got vast rural areas, and the technology we're essentially not address our own social environment. We need to do technologies that are going to provide all environment. Can I just take any questions that are on the topic?
Yeah, I really look to coming together. Experts on this sales network where we are, it's kind of where the world is. And I think we really are sleeping over the concept, so we call it that. And it's going to take a lot of effort on our part to really reach out to standards and levels that the world is. Just to mention the fact that not all is lost. I mean, we have gone along, quite a long that went from 1G, where you actually tried in order to have a cell phone, because the battery was so big that you put it in the back, put your account, etc. To mobile, 2G, where we have now small cell phones, where the whole world almost covered, every one of the small cell phones. That's an advance. But now, as we move on, then we look at multimedia services, and therefore we came up with 3G. But we realized that there were limitations. Now came 4G, which in a way is not so much, I will admit one thing. It is an extension of all the generations from 1G to 3G, then going 4G, but it is more than that. It is actually the glue that binds all wireless networks especially the access network. Of course, we got the core according to 3GPP of IMS, IP multimedia core network subsystem, etc. But now there's going to be vertical handovers. Because they go from satellite or DVB, DVH, you go to Bluetooth, you go to multi-mode, you go to 2G, etc. They'll all be working in close harmony together because there will be a vertical handover in between. And that will actually mitigate the problem of shortage of spectrum. So, in this particular respect, we haven't even gone into it. The world is already seeing a window into that area. Of course, now we are faced with 5G right now, which I just told Siyabonga that 5G will not be the end of ICT history. It may just be sitting around only to find out something again is knocking on the door. But one thing that we are going to have in terms of the fact that we will have 4G is that it will include all the access networks, hooking onto the IMS, the sub-network, which is the core, and also making sure that they all talk together in unison. So there will going to be an ecosystem of all of these wireless networks. Each one will have its own particular purposes. Each one will have its own weaknesses in certain respects. Wi-Fi has got its strong points somewhere, because then you've got higher bandwidth within a local coverage. Bluetooth also has got mobile, you need to walk around and travel in your car in order to catch up with what is happening, etc. Fiber is necessary because now, with huge spectrum, we're going to have a big part, the so-called broadband. And it's always what you call fiber, which will probably, if you've got a 1 GP into an access network, you can imagine what the backhaul should be. Say hundreds of us, each one is got 1 G connection. You have to have a big pipe in the background. And therefore, the synergy amongst all of these networks will really come to the fact and really do wonders for all of us if we hope to reach the information society. So I pointed out, 5G, of course, will be wireless, triple G. I mean, triple W, wireless World Wide Web. So there will be 4 Ws. Wireless World Wide Web. That's what 5G is going to be. And we will be very excited about it and we're looking forward. So we must actually speed up a little bit and not hope that others will do it for us and then we'll just catch up, etc. We should be part and parcel in order to contribute to these changes and also come up with our particularities in terms of where we live, how this can also be considered in terms of standardization. Standardization is alright because it creates economy and scope and scale. But also there's need for competition in innovation to get the best in class. You can't just say, all you guys are supposed to be at this level. What if someone has got a good, wonderful idea which does not fit in the group? Let him try out. Maybe we'll say, hey, you know what, you were wrong. This is the way to go. So I would encourage, not that there is stratification, this, others are doing that. Others have got other ideas and others, some will not be agreed to. So let them go around. Maybe we'll catch up and know what it is. So let the flowers bloom and let's see what we'll come up with.
Any more questions before I...
Yeah, I'd like to ask you because a while back at the instance I had the talking about this last night. And I'm wondering that all these nice connections and so forth, they all connect. So the gentleman here mentioned that we heard about 5,000. So I want to ask them, we know who is really benefiting from this connectivity. I mean, even for 5G, Huawei has saying they're going to get their 5G ready for the 2020 Olympics in Japan. But I wonder if our Minister of Sport realizes the challenge because they say Devon wants to lead. I wonder if him and the captains of the industry realize the challenge because always when there's a big event coming to South Africa, it's coming to Devon and so forth. But it's all about building the stadium, Wi-Fi and connectivity is the least of those worries, as the uncle mentioned, there is no. So that's my question.
Let me give it to you before I
Thank you very much. I mean, ever since I started working, the issue of under-service areas, it's been there. And up until now, I haven't seen any changes, to the equation, to address the equation. So, if you look at other countries that we're trying to compare ourselves, they've got innovation hubs, for instance, in areas where like they can actually improve the service. How can you have someone like from Robert, same team, for instance, to go and address issues from the right to address these issues? Why is it so difficult to have like innovation hubs whereby you can go and upskill people like us? I come from the rural area myself, but I'm stuck in Joburg. Right? So, but I understand exactly the challenges that the community are on. Right? Why is it so difficult to actually block us from moving from our own villages to come to Joburg? Why is it so difficult? Because we do have this. That's affordable. Right? I can make a change in my village where I come from. But why is this gap getting wider and wider between the government and the private sector? Because it's getting wider and wider. And the issue of underserved will never be like, I'm not saying it will never, but I haven't seen a change ever since I started working. So why it's so difficult to have those innovation hubs that will actually upskill us and preventing us to come to and get stuck in trouble and to such an extent that we get to the and we retire again, and then not making any changes where we come from.
I think with less than 5 minutes, can I just ask that in making or closing comments, can we just try and address the 3 questions that came up? I'll give the order of preference as we started. But as you make the closing comments and all, just also try and address it.
Okay, I'll be as brief as possible to try to address those. My view is that technology is not our challenge. In this room alone, I can promise you, we can find young people like you with a little bit of guidance, they can actually catch up at the leading edge technology. It's applying it. Our challenge is putting it on the ground, like you said, into the townships, in Guguletu, in the township, in the major city, in Otibistad, and so forth. We've got to be innovative in that area and apply the best technology that's suitable, that's viable economically, and so forth, and understand that the economic models that we need to do that are very different from those that we do in the city. We can, as Angela says, we have to, and we are doing it, keeping in touch with the leading edge technologies. We've known them, except that we've got to start getting into the habit of applying them to the whole nation, not to, because otherwise the divide, the economic divide and the social divide that we know is bigger.
I just like to reply to the gentleman because I feel his concern very much. And there are ways in which people can be upskilled. Bits at their in their Braamfontein ICT hub provides those kind of facilities in terms of ICT. The problem is they have a very successful sort of like what they've done in the last 2 years. They've educated and they've upskilled a lot of people that came from rural areas. The problem they have now is they don't have enough financial support to be able to expand that capacity. And the other day when IBM launched this big scheme of theirs to get a bid, I actually addressed that with the Minister of Science and Technology. And I said, it's all very well that we spend money on these big projects, but here is a unit that actually provides upskilling right at ground level. And yet you are, as DST, are not supporting it. And then they undertook that they're actually now going to start looking at it. But the same with industry. They can't get money from industry. But I tell you what, you want a sponsorship for cricket, for rugby, for soccer, then there's no lack of money. But when you want something for technology, banks are closed.
Yeah, no, I'll be quick in the interest of time. I might not answer you, Temba, is in any eloquent way, but to me, really, what I see is that unless we address this gap of knowledge amongst ourselves and the broader community, honestly, we are going to struggle. I mean, I think, as I think some of the fathers of this nation have said a lot about education. I'm not going to quote them. I think the issue is that if we were active in the international environment, you will see us by publications and committees and sharing these things are online. We are not there. And that is what I think we need to begin to educate our people about this industry in all levels. I think that will go a long way to make people understand this. I think just to myself, we are doing good support tertiary education, teaching guys from anywhere. I'm from the same institution. That point of view, that's all. What we do need to encourage is learning in the new technology subjects, learn about machine to machine, learn about software-defined networking. That's the type of research articles we produce commercially. To help us to grow our product range and to take that into account. We look at business cases for underserved areas. We are working with people in scenarios to try and work out business cases for ICT deployment. Whether it's community-based or individual-based, those models are on the table. We just have to execute them.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think that concludes our session.